Hey there, career seekers. Welcome to Find Your Passion Career. I'm here to help you find a career you like, and dare I say, possibly even love. I'm your host, Amanda Nachman. I'm the founder and CEO of College Magazine. After working with thousands of college students, I've noticed that when it comes to career, there's a lot to demystify. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Find Your Passion Career podcast. Today, I have with me Simon T. Bailey. Welcome to the podcast, Simon.
Thank you for having me. So good to be with you.
Yeah, Simon's purpose is to spark listeners to lead countries, companies, and communities differently. His content is based on more than 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry, including serving as the sales director for Disney Institute based at Walt Disney World Resort. He has worked with almost 2,000 organizations in 50 countries. Recently, the editors of Direct Selling News listed him as one of the top 20 motivational speakers to inspire, educate, and motivate. He is listed along with Sean Aker, Mel Robbins, and John Maxwell. Simon's viral video posted by Goalcast to Facebook has almost 90 million views, and LinkedIn Learning features 3 of his online courses to reach professionals in 100 plus countries. Wow, Simon, welcome to the podcast. This is so exciting to have you here. You know, I think that you have a very lofty and amazing career that you've built, and it's very nonlinear. So, how did you get started? Like when you first started out in your career, if you can think back to, just starting out, what did it look like? Did you know that this was going to be your career?
I think it started when Disney sent me to Paris, and I had to present a program to 1,000 leaders from Barclays Bank out of London. And while presenting, Lion King had just come out, and I said, remember who you are more than what you have become, which is the famous line from Lion King. And people came up to me, they said, we had goosebumps the entire time you were talking, and it's not from the air condition. So I went back to my room that night and I asked myself 3 questions, which have really become the catalyst for everything that I think about and talk about. And so question number 1 is, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail, right? Question number 2, what would I do if no one paid me to do it? And then the third question is from the philosopher Howard Thurman: don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs are people who come alive. And when I answered all 3 of those questions, I said, I want to speak, write, train, consult, and coach. And that's what I decided to do. So I left Paris, came back to Orlando, got promoted at Disney World. And I said, I'll take this promotion if I can still give presentations to executive audiences that come to learn how Disney does it. And they said, absolutely. So that literally became the catalyst for me doing this work now.
Yeah. Oh, I love these 3 questions. And wow, I think if you're listening, write those questions down, ask yourself those questions. Like, what would you do if no one paid you to do it? What makes you come alive? Asking yourself that. I think some of us have trouble finding the time to even reflect on questions like this. So I think that's important to carve out that time and ask yourself those questions. For me, it's a big part of, taking that time to pause and write it down. Mm-hmm. That's me getting intentional and being able to ask these questions, but I'm going to go back and ask myself these questions after today. Well, so how do you encourage people to be the spark? That's your message in your book. That's your message in your talk. How do you encourage people to do that?
First of all, quit your job and go to work, because a job stands for just over bored. A paycheck is given to people who show up, but opportunities are given to individuals who think and work beyond what they're paid to do. So when you think and work beyond what you're paid to do, you shift from being a person that is employed to now a person who is deployed. And so your brilliance is deployed in an environment that activates you rather than tolerates you. So if you truly, truly want to be the spark, I would encourage you to think of that. Second thing is to realize that there are no more jobs available, only opportunities to come in and to be different and make a difference. So then you say, okay, Simon, that's great. Where do we start? I think it's first of all, understanding that the greatest question the organization wants you to answer is, what problem have you been created to solve? Because when you solve problems, you become the spark. And what I'm about to say is counterintuitive. You don't chase promotions, promotions chase you. Because when you are going above and beyond every single day, you don't have to wait for the tap on the shoulder. Because you are already in motion, someone will come along and say, we have to have you in our department, in our division. And so it's really looking at being an intrapreneur within an organization. If you go to work for a business, if you're an entrepreneur, it's every single day waking up to do the work, to say, how do I add value to this day?
Well, and take some notes from Simon's own career at Disney, where you turned your role into what it was that was, what it was that you envisioned, right? You created that opportunity for yourself. You said, this is what I'm passionate about. I will take this new role if I can be doing what lights me up, if I can keep speaking, if I can keep consulting in this way. I think that's really inspiring. And some people might fear, wow, you've made it this far in such a notable brand, such something as big as Disney. You might be afraid to shake the boat, but they want you to shake the boat, especially when you're at that level.
Yeah, they definitely wanted me to shake the boat, but be it known, the real backstory and how I left Disney is I got a call from a journalist. So whenever you work at Disney, you never talk to the media unless authorized. And somehow this journalist called my direct line at my desk and he said, where do you see yourself 10 to 15 years from now? And I said, I see myself as the president and CEO of the Walt Disney World Resort and eventually the chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And he puts this in print. So the article comes out page 12, Florida Business Trend magazine, still Google it to this day. And my boss called me in the office. He's like, what were you thinking when you did this interview? And I said, Larry, I work at a company whose motto is, if your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme. For when you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are. It's funny today, but was not funny then. So HR showed up a couple hours later and they had me sign a little piece of paper that went into my personnel file. And I got a call from the senior vice president who reported directly to the president. This is true story, no embellishment. And he said, do you need me to go to the president on your behalf? Because this is really bad. And I said, how bad is it? He said, if this article would have come out before the markets closed, people would have said, who's this guy that is in line to be president of Disney and eventually chairman and CEO? And I was like, no, don't go to the president. So let's just say Disney didn't fire me that day, but about a year later, I heard the footsteps coming and they were not singing It's a Small World after all. So the last 18 years, I've literally built a career on how I committed career suicide. So don't try this at home, boys and girls.
Your response with like a Disney riddle is, so beautiful. I think, only like that story right there is only a Disney story.
Oh, it is. So you have to work there for this to be true. And of course, the president, the guy that was president at the time, his name is Al Weiss. I see him around town all the time. He's since retired, and we laugh about it every single time I see him because he's like, I still can't believe you did it, but obviously you're doing okay. And I said, Disney is a great place to be from. So, yeah.
So no matter how big your career gets, you can always, mess up and figure it out.
Fail forward. That's what John Maxwell says. Fail forward. Get back up, dust your knees off, and realize that failure is not final. Failure is only feedback.
Failure is part of the path, part of the journey. Well, so what inspired you to share your message about spark and brilliance?
Well, we have worked with almost 2,000 organizations in 50 countries, and I did some work for the Ritz-Carlton Learning Institute right after I left the Mouse House. And I said to our instructional designer who used to work at Disney University, I said, DL, which stands for Debbie Land, I said, DL, what is it that we know after working with all these different organizations from Microsoft to Google to MasterCard? And what we discovered is every organization has a spark, an individual that has decided to go the extra inch. There are 6 inches from your right ear to your left ear, from your left ear to your right ear. So it's not so much to show up and to focus on what you do, but it's how to be. And when you understand how to be the spark, you literally become the catalyst in your department, in your division, on your team, who looks for a way to take the customer experience to the next level. So an individual that's a spark really understands that customer service is a department, but customer love is a mindset. And when you have that customer love mindset, you shift from a transaction to a relationship, because a transaction is an exchange of money, but a relationship is understanding that relationships are the currency of the future. You don't have to be client facing to be the spark. It's certainly understanding how do you unlock your inner barista. A client went into Starbucks and said to the barista behind the counter, "You pour coffee every single day." And the barista said, "No, I pour happiness." So that barista understood how to be the spark for that customer or client. For those of you who have internal people that you deal with every single day, that's your customer. And how do you pour happiness? How do you become that light that makes a difference and goes the extra inch, not because you have to, but because you want to?
A message that I share in my book is like, you never know who you're going to meet that day. And so whether you're in work mode or not, going and having a conversation with your Starbucks barista or with someone, at the checkout counter, could change your day, could brighten your moment, could spark something for you in your life that you didn't expect. And yeah, I love this be the spark. It's making that decision to do something differently than going through the motions or what is expected, but to be thinking about what could you create?
That's exactly it. What's interesting is customers are tired of the mechanical rote. This is the way it's always been done. And they really want the spontaneity that happens in the moment when a person decides to shift from being interesting to interested. And it's that shift in thinking where you look for a way to create what I call that emotional hook, or to create and leave that emotional tattoo, and you become an emotionologist. Emotionology is a word that I created when I wrote the book, Be the Spark, and it's the art and science of creating that memorable moment. When you create that memorable moment for the customer, they will yelp about the brand because you decided to be the difference for them.
I like that. Well, Simon, we tell the story of our career and we give the highlight reel, right? I do it too. But we've all faced career rejections or moments where we didn't feel qualified. Can you tell about a time where that happened to you, where you didn't feel qualified or you faced career rejection? Because I want our listeners to know that this happens.
Yeah, well, first of all, it took me 2 years to get hired at Disney, 10 interviews, and a 10-page psychological analysis from Gallup. So I decided that I'm just going to give up. I'm done. But something kept me going back time and time again for the interview over a 2-year period. And the person that interviewed me, she is still, I ran into her the other day at the drugstore and I said, thank you for never giving up on me over 2 years. So that was probably the first bit of rejection that I've experienced career-wise. But it taught me that it's not who you are that holds you back, it's who you think you're not that holds you back. And sometimes you focus on who you think you're not instead of who you really are at the core. The other interesting rejection that I've had is when I wrote the book, Release Your Brilliance, which was one of my first books that I published, self-published on my own. I sold 18,000 copies out of the back of my trunk
Wow.
over so many months, right? And I sent it off to 13 publishers and I received a Dear John letter of rejection. And I was like, seriously? Like, I poured my life savings and everything into the book. And then just by happenstance, I happened to be in Las Vegas speaking at an event. And a lady came up to me and she said, do you have a book deal? I said, no. And she said, well, I'm on the board for Hudson News, which Hudson is in all the airports, about 300 airports around the country and Canada. And she said, I'm going to talk to the COO. And sure enough, she talked to the COO. And the COO says, we've never heard of you. We have Anderson Cooper that's going to speak at our event, but who are you? And I was like, I mean, is this where I insert bless his little heart, right? So sure enough, I spoke and he said, take a walk with me. And we're at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And literally in a matter of 30 minutes, he introduces me to 13 of the publishers that had rejected me. And the conversation went this way. He said, this is Simon, and we want you to give him a book deal because we are the largest book purchaser for airports in the world. And all of them said, okay. And the following week, I had 3 calls with HarperCollins, Putnam Penguin, and Meredith Books. And I got an agent like literally out of the blue. And I ended up going with HarperCollins. But what it said to me was the ability to continue to show up and do the work, even though the doors have closed in your face. But what I've discovered is that opportunity swings on the hinges of frustration and disappointment. So the door of opportunity is going to open. Just don't give up because the hinges are not swinging in your favor.
How do you find it within yourself to say, I'm going to keep going? I'm going to, and what are those actions that you take in between, right? Because it's not like you apply once and you do nothing and you apply again and hope that the results are different, right? That's insanity. So you take different actions. So can you shine a light on what those were? Because I know that you were probably like working it and trying to do everything you could to get that yes. And I think that we, at the outside world, especially for those that face rejection and think, oh, well, that's a sign from the universe that it's not for me. We want to give up, and we don't realize that, no, there's these actions that you can take and to build your qualified.
Yeah, so let's start with research. Research says that by the time a child is 17 years of age, they've heard no 150,000 times and only yes 5,000 times. So ultimately, the goal is when I receive a no, could it be that no just simply means not now or not this door? So the first thing I would encourage everyone to do is to reframe the no and say, what did I learn? What did I discover in the midst of the no? And don't personalize it or internalize it as if there's something wrong with you, because sometimes the no happens and then we build an entire story around the no, and the story becomes more powerful than the no. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to begin to write down what is right about you. And when you understand what's right about you, it gives you confidence in the moment that in the midst of receiving a no or going through the process, that no matter what the outcome is, you're good with who you are. And that self-confidence, that chutzpah, that ability to say that, you know what, I am right. I am supposed to be here. What it really does, it creates what I would call an internal belonging. So before you can belong to anything else, you have to belong to yourself. When you belong to yourself, you have what Rabbi Kushner calls emotional congruence. When you have emotional congruence, everything that you think, do, say, and feel is totally in alignment. So you show up fully aligned, fully connected, fully alive, that no matter what the outcome is, I understand from the inside out what makes me different so I can make a difference. And then probably the third thing to consider is how you talk to yourself about yourself. What's your self-explanatory style in the midst of whatever you are experiencing? Because how you explain it back to yourself allows you to either A, have confidence, or B, deflate that hope or possibility of what could become better. So just always be very mindful that language is the software of the mind. So how do I use language that creates the future that I want? And how do I upgrade my verbal software? How do I find the internal control alt delete that deletes from my mind drive and my hard drive those outcomes that do not work to my advantage?
It's not no, but maybe no, not right now. And
Correct.
it's not no to you. It's not personal, right? Flip the script, right? It's just, this wasn't the time for
Correct.
you right now. And maybe it's not Disney today, but it's Disney 2 years later. And right now you could build up your skills with other organizations that may not be these 1% most competitive, notable brands.
Yes, exactly.
How does your message challenge our current beliefs around careers?
So it challenges everyone to realize that in a world of algorithms, artificial intelligence, automation, and autonomous cars, that the number one skill that I need for my career, according to LinkedIn research, is creativity. Something that bots, robots, Siri, Alexa don't have is creativity, but you do. So, how do I begin to focus on what makes me creative? The second skill that is often talked about by LinkedIn is adaptability. So, as you know, adaptability is being able to flex, be nimble, be thrown on a team where you have to experience what Marie Forleo calls figure out ability, right? So, it's in that adaptability, figure out ability that you recognize that you can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think the third thing is to always think about if I show up on a team, how do I begin to say, how do I serve the team instead of what I can get from the team? Because if you show up with hat in hand, it's about you instead of everyone else. And when you shift from the me to we, all of a sudden you will discover people will aid and help you get down the road of building your career because you're not so self centered because you've dealt with the ego. Ego is edging goodness out. So when I deal with my edging goodness out, my ego, I can show up at a place to serve you, not because what I can get from you, but what I can give to you.
I want to touch on the creative message because I think that there's this notion that some of us are creative and some of us aren't. I don't subscribe to that notion. I do think there's creativity in all of us. How do you unleash your creative?
So I saw a quote years ago that said, creativity is the ability to go off script. And
Mm.
I believe one of the ways to open up creativity is to immerse yourself in an environment, in a book, in a magazine, in a course that is so foreign to you for what you will discover about yourself. Because creativity is releasing the need to be right and it's becoming open to what wants to emerge as I learn, right? So I think creativity is this ability to remain curious. A few months ago, I had a chance to interview Professor Francesca Gino, who has been teaching at Harvard Business School for the last 20 years. In fact, she teaches PhD level courses in behavioral economics. And I said to Dr. Gino, I said, what are you seeing in your researches, especially as we think about thriving and flourishing? And she said, what she's discovered, individuals who were able to go through the pandemic had the ability to forever remain curious. She said individuals who were not curious were paralyzed because they stopped learning. And being paralyzed, being stuck because, oh my goodness, my career has stalled in neutral, it's not moving forward, is because that person is looking through the rearview mirror of the what they thought it should be or the way it used to be, instead of looking through the windshield of what it can be. So everyone listening to us right now really has to stop and think about, am I looking through the rearview mirror or am I looking through the windshield?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Creativity is curiosity. What's something you can get curious about right now? If you're listening in, what's something that you could unleash your creativity? I mean, I'm actually taking this advice right now. I did it in a different way, but I'm like, how can I, for me as a writer, I always want to think about ways I can advance my writing. And something I'm doing is, I thought during the pandemic, it's kind of neat that you can take classes anywhere with improv studios. And I thought, wouldn't that be cool? I don't live in Chicago, but I could be part of Upright Citizens Brigade and UCB, this, because I'm a big fan of Amy Poehler, and I signed up for an online sketch comedy writing class. And I don't have that background, but I've really enjoyed the opportunity to start thinking about what my sketch could be. And I'm finding myself, I'm finding my creativity where it could have been, a little bit dormant during these times where we are so overwhelmed with the pandemic. It's top of mind and it weighs us down.
Mhm.
And how often are we thinking about a funny sketch or ways we can heighten a beat? And that's kind of some stuff I'm personally working on. And I didn't think about it in the way that you're saying it, is that I was kind of curious about this. And that curiosity led to creativity.
Wow.
So I love this message, Simon. Okay, I want you to tell me about the object you brought and how it reflects your passion.
Are you ready?
I'm so excited. And I just want you all to know, if you're watching visually here, I thought Simon's background was like so pristine. I was like, this cannot be, oh, you got a kippah. Okay, tell me about this kippah.
So I experienced my first Shabbat in Johannesburg, South Africa. A client friend of mine invited me and my family to his house on a Friday night for Shabbat. And they gave me the yarmulke, and I was like, wow, it was such like an experience, right? And just to be around family, fellowship, conversation. And what I discovered in that moment, the ability to put myself in another environment halfway around the world to experience something that has been going on for thousands of years, to now have an appreciation for this sacred moment and experience. So that's, I wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's beautiful. And this was your first Shabbat?
It was my first, absolutely.
That's pretty cool. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Shabbat, it's, taking that day of rest on Friday, sundown Friday to sunset Saturday, and really focusing on family, gathering, eating. It is a very spiritual experience. And that's pretty cool that you got to do that in Johannesburg.
Yes.
Well,
And I'll never forget it. It's something that will forever stay near and dear to my heart because it's that emotional imprint, that emotional tattoo that you just never forget it once you experience it.
yeah. That kind of takes me back to when I did an Israel trip and got to celebrate Shabbat and do it right, really take that time off and just not work at all and just embrace that time with people. And I think that that's, gosh, taking time is so important now. It's the currency of today, time and attention.
Totally.
I can see just from the way you show up, the way you light up on this podcast, that you exude passion. And so, how did you realize that this was a career that was going to reflect your passion?
I think it started for me in high school. I went to McKinley High School, Buffalo, New York. McKinley High School named after the 25th president, William B. McKinley. And it was a trade high school where you had to take sheet metal, air conditioning, refrigeration, plumbing, carpentry, and I failed all of the classes. And so I went out for basketball and I got cut because I said, you are not the next Magic Johnson. I went out for football and I got cut. And then I went out for track and field and they said, my brother, you are a little slow. And I ended up running cross country. It was just sad. My parents felt sorry for me. I felt sorry for me. And my parents said, now that you totally embarrassed yourself for the family, we need to move you to another school. And what's interesting, between my freshman year and sophomore year in high school, I attempted suicide over the summer. Because I just really had low self-esteem, low self-worth, no self-concept. And I went to a new high school, and it was at that new high school that my English teacher, Miss Rita Lankus, may she forever rest in peace, said to me, young man, I want you to write a speech and give it before the entire school. And I said, absolutely. And that one speech allowed me to join the DECA Club, Distributed Education Clubs of America. Back then, I went and got involved with Optimist International, the American Legion. I did the debate club, and I found my swim lane. What I realized is that when I was at the previous high school, I was not in my swim lane when I went out for sports. And then I wasn't handy with my hands. My tools were words. My mouth has a platinum tongue. That's what I do. That's how I roll. And so when I really began to understand that at 15 years of age, it really shaped who I am today.
Find your swim lane. Yeah. And from all of that, what could be seen as failure, right? Not finding your swim lane and feeling like you don't fit in. I mean, that weighs on people, especially young people, and thinking that, what do I have to offer? And until you find it, you might be overwhelmed by that feeling. And I think it's important to recognize that you're not the only one. So many of us, and most people, I mean, don't find their swim lane even in high school
Mhm.
or college or after college. And you've got to do a lot of that failure, a lot of that trying to make it in a lane that isn't the right fit. But you start to, if you keep experimenting, you keep staying open and you stay curious, I think there's the potential to find your swim lane. I don't think I've met anyone that's ever said to me that they've never found it. And it doesn't have to be a level 10, red passion. It could just be something sparks, a small spark for you. And then when you start to explore that, it can build. And it sounds like you found that and it built and it burst into what you have today.
Absolutely. Seth Godin, in his latest book, The Practice, says, doing what you love is for amateurs, but loving what you do is for professionals. And the reason I love that quote so much is I wake up every single day. I've been up since 3 a.m. this morning. I love what I do. It's not work, it's play, it's discovery. It's what makes me come alive. And it's how I find joy. Because like when you find joy and you love what you do, everybody that steps into your quantum field, they can like feel your energy because you are vibrating. Like, this is my jam. This is my jam.
And people want to be a part of it. It's like when you hear a great song and you can't help but dance.
Hmm.
And if
Hmm.
you're putting out that energy in whatever you do, it's just going to be exponential.
Totally.
All right. Before we hop off, any final parting advice for emerging professionals?
I say emerging professionals right now should be thinking of seeing yourself as the CEO of You Incorporated. As the CEO of You Incorporated, you have a portfolio of skills. So please, ma'am, please, sir, every project you work on, every job you have, every team that you are assigned, keep a digital portfolio of what did you learn, what did you see, how did you grow. The second thing is always remember, show up before time because the real deals are done before the meeting starts. When you comprehend that, you're probably saying, why should I show up before time? If the meeting starts at 11 a.m., show up at 10:45 because it's in the small talk where you build rapport and people discover know, like, and trust. Deals are done with know, like, and trust, not just the data, not just the pedigree or the degree from an Ivy League school or wherever you've attended school. Yes, those things are important, but the real deals are done when people feel that they can lean into you and connect with you. And then the third thing is never stop learning. Eric Hoffer, a noted philosopher, says, in times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. So never stop learning and put together a personal board of directors made up of individuals that have a different core competency that challenge you to rise to the occasion so that you can be the spark.
That's amazing. Oh, and you're killing me with the board of directors. I call it create creative, make courageous connections and, get your, build mentorships and have that hype squad. But even better, once you make those courageous connections, call them your board of directors of
Absolutely.
You Incorporated.
Yeah, call it forth. Why not?
All
You
right.
only got one life to live. There's no do-over. This
I
is
hope
it.
that everyone listening today is about to write their articles of organization and be You Incorporated.
Right.
If you can't feel this through the podcast, like this is a shakeup and a wake up from Simon. Thank you so much for joining me. This was amazing. And for joining all of us. You've got such a beautiful energy and such a palpable message with real action that everyone here can take. Be You Incorporated, make those connections, build your board of directors. And yeah, every project that you've been part of, keep track of it. Keep track of what you've learned. This is part of You Inc. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our show. Be sure to check out the show notes and email any questions to yourpassioncareer@gmail.com. Bye.